First slide. So what we're going to go through this morning is a company overview, a quick background and marketing blast on who Grandstream is. Then we're going to talk to the product of the day, the GVC3200. It's, as you'll see as we go through the presentation, it's a pretty unique box. Everybody here at Alloy is very excited about the capabilities of this guy and how well it's going to fit into the Australian market. So I'm looking forward to taking you through that. I'm going to talk about what's in the box, what's so special about this particular video conferencing hardware and the feature sets of it. We're going to talk about adding third-party apps and some sample deployments, get onto some mixing, and then by the end of it, hopefully you'll be as excited about this product as I am. So Grandstream, founded in 2002, over 500 employees currently. They're spread over 11 sites. In Australia, distribution and logistics are handled by Alloy, that being us. Their product portfolio these days is well over 50 products, and that's spread across 5 product families. That's video conferencing, which we're talking about now, IP phones, of which is 2 or 3 families of those that you're probably all familiar with. Their ATAs, Grandstream told me they're the largest ATA manufacturer in the world, and with the testing that we've done of their products across various telco platforms, I tend to believe them. IP surveillance cameras and recorders, these are a new product range. If you don't know anything about them, have a chat to your account manager. Besides being very good CCTV cameras over IP, they also have a SIP stack, allowing us to treat them like a telephone and dial into them as just any other extension on the network, and some interesting alarm capabilities come out of that as well. And then of course there's their IP PBXs. These are a low cost but full featured PBX aimed at the SMB market. And as you're probably aware, Grandstream primarily serves the small to medium-sized businesses and consumer markets, and as such, their products are a very attractive price point. And one point that not everybody talks about when they talk about Grandstream is they've had sustained double-figure compound growth since they were founded. A very successful company, and we can see some of the evidence of that success based on just the increase in sales and the increase in product offerings. So Grandstream has a long and storied history with open source, and Android is just the latest of the open source partners that they've tied themselves up with. And we see Android turn up in a couple of their products, a couple of telephone handsets, which I'm going to talk to briefly later, and of course the Android-based video conferencing platform that we're going to talk about today. And that the Android basis for this system gives it some very, very interesting capabilities that we'll get to shortly. So the GVC3200 video conferencing system, it's Android 4.4 based with support for Skype, Google Hangouts, SIP video calling and more. So what does that mean? It means any application, video capable application that you can install on Android 4.4 will give you access and allow you to use this system to communicate with someone on the other end. The embedded MCU is capable up to 4-way 1080p, 5-way 720p, and 9-way VGA conferencing. The MCU and camera are all built into a single unit that you can see on the screen there in front of you, making it easy to deploy, small, lightweight, and easy to mount. And in fact, it comes with all the mounting equipment you need to wall mount that camera if you're not going to have it desk-based. The camera's 12 times optical zoom and wide angle. I think it's 70 degrees down to 6.8 when you zoom it into its maximum range, so 70 to 6.8 degrees, which is just perfect for small to large conference rooms with the ability to do that 12 times optical zoom. Gigabit networking, of course, 3 HDMI output ports, and we'll talk about that later, but that gives us the ability to have 3 screens connected and operating at the same time in our conference room. Also includes Bluetooth, and this is really for the remote control, or if you're running, there's a remote control app that you can run on your phone and connect via Bluetooth to control your conferences. And we also have the speakerphone and microphone for the conference phone for the audio. So we'll talk more about what's in the actual kit when you purchase it, and a couple of slides from now. So 2 things about this is, 1 is it's easy to install, 2, the easy interoperability. The flexibility of this system to allow you to conference across any Android-based app, including Skype, Hangouts, Link, and any other app you can think of, plus the ability, because it's a SIP-based conferencing platform, it can communicate with any other SIP-based conferencing platform out there, and we'll talk about some of those in a moment. So what's in the box? When you buy this guy, you get the camera and MCU that you see there on the screen, the external USB speakerphone, a remote control and the batteries to go with it, the power adapter to power it, Ethernet cables, HDMI cables, the wall mounting kit, so everything you need to get this set up and going, and the quick installation guide that tells you how to get it up and running out of the box. So all you need to add to this is a screen or screens up to 3. So having a look at the hardware and just seeing how it hangs together, we have a 2 megapixel, a 1/3 of an inch CMOS sensor, and as I said, it's 70 degrees to 6.3 in terms of the wide angle to narrow angle using the zoom functionality. We have 23 degrees tilt up and down and 90 degrees both ways from the pan, so very flexible, and all, of course, controlled from the remote control or your remote control app. We have an LED on the front to indicate what's going on, plus a display that you might be able to make out in the photo there on the right that also tells you the status of the unit. On the back, where all the interesting stuff happens, we have a number of different ports. There's a VGA interface and a HDI input interface. The first 2 plugs on the left, as you look at it from the rear, are for sharing data, so doing screen shares, running presentations, etc., etc. If both of those plugs are plugged in, the HDMI takes control. The next 3 plugs are our HDMI outs. So plug number 1, which is on the right of those 3 plugs, is where we must plug in our primary screen, then the second and third screen after that, and we must plug them in that order. The next slot right in the middle of the unit there is the SD storage slot. So with that, we can plug in an SD card, and that SD card is where we push our recording to. The next USB slot is the speaker slot. Let's get over to there. So the speaker and microphone jack, and that's where we plug in our external speakerphone. The next USB port will allow us to connect to either storage, but more importantly, when running an Android app, it gives us the ability to put in a keyboard or a mouse. Then we have the network interface, which does the obvious, a power interface, and a reset button. So the reset button gives us the ability, if we've lost all our passwords and everything else, to factory reset this guy back to the factory state. also gives us the ability to initiate a firmware upgrade. So what's so special about this guy? Well, first of all, he's a SIP-based conferencing platform. It can be used by itself to connect to other existing platforms such as Cisco or Polycom or some of the other brands that are around out there. It can be used as, even though it's an MCU, it's also a room system. So we can deploy a number of these in an environment across our capital city offices, for example, to communicate with each other. And any one of those units can initiate a conference and be in charge of it, and all the others can participate in it. And again, 4 at 1080p, 5 at 720p. It supports a couple of applications. Now, IP Video Talk Pro is a Grandstream SIP site for video conferencing, and some of you might be familiar with it as a tool for doing free video calls between Grandstream devices, or free at the moment. At some stage in the future, it may become a charged service, but with the use of that, we have the ability to log into IP Video Talk and run a video conference that way. BlueJeans is another client or another hosted video conferencing service that's client is included in the GVC3200. So any GVC3200 can sign into BlueJeans and take advantage of their conferencing platform. Finally, and the part that makes this unit so powerful, is that it's an Android system, and we can load third-party video apps onto this system and use this high-quality camera and our screens to communicate with somebody on any other Android device or any other platform that supports the application that is supported in Android. So for example, we can load Skype onto this device, log into Skype, connect to other Skype users, and with a high quality image and some conferencing capabilities. Now, whether they're on Skype on a phone, an iPhone, a PC, whatever platform that they've got access to, this system can communicate with them that way. So this is really the power of this system, the flexibility to communicate with our staff, our partners, our customers over whatever video platform we want to. So, as I said, any video or audio app can be conferenced to the GVC3200 in point-to-point or point-to-multipoint. We'll talk about point-to-multipoint and mixing a little bit later in the presentation, and where we're at with that at the moment. So, interoperability with major platforms. Amongst the documents that we'll put on the website for you to download are the application notes for some of the interoperability testing that's been done with the likes of Polycom, Huawei, Cisco, Yealink, Telelabs, and Lifesize. All of these systems have some level of SIP capability, and the Grandstream will communicate with them very, very effectively. So if you're adding an extra room into an environment, you're looking for a room system that will give you the ability to communicate with the likes of Polycom or Cisco that perhaps your partners have installed, the Grandstream GVC3200 can do that. So with the Android apps, as I said, supports all Android 4.4.2 compliant applications. Connects with other platform apps that are available on Android, for example, iPhone, Windows, Mac. So as I said, something like Skype that's available across all those platforms. This system will connect into that quite easily and efficiently in the same user interface that you're familiar with on those applications. As I said, because you actually run the Android apps on this system live as any other Android device. Hosted video platforms, we've spoken about those. And of course, if you want to communicate with some native SIP video devices, we have my two favorite endpoints, so I'll just touch on really quickly. The GVX3200 Android-based video phone. So I can connect from my 3200 in a conference room to someone's desk in another office in our company who's running the 3240. We can connect via Skype, we can connect to SIP devices, we can connect in Google, we can connect in any of these communication apps that we choose to connect and use with, depending on whose contacts, depending on what they have available, all that flexibility available on that phone. And of course the same with the 3275, the 7-inch touchscreen version. Again, an Android phone, giving us the same flexibility to connect with and conference with the 3200, either directly as a SIP device or via one of the Android apps. Notice that these phones also include Bluetooth, USB, HDMI for output to a larger screen, and built-in EHS for those that want cordless headsets. So adding third-party apps, right, with the 3200, the same as with the Android phones from Grandstream, the process for adding third-party apps is pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to step through what that looks like. From the 3200 home screen, we choose the application icon. That brings us into the application list, and those familiar with Android will be very familiar with this sort of screen. From there, we look at the GS market, which is the Grandstream market. Once in the Grandstream market, we choose Google Play, download and install Google Play, and from there going forward, we have the ability to use Google Play to download any third-party apps that we want to look at. So in this example, we do a search for Skype, download, install, and we're away. And it's really that simple. So of course you need a Skype account, but outside of that, as I say, it is really that simple for you now to use a professional video conferencing platform and a high quality camera to communicate with your customers and partners across Skype or any other application that they might have available. And again, once you start the app, log in, app starts up, same user interface we're all familiar with. Now, in the case of Skype, we can navigate around that using the remote. There's also a remote app that can be run on your phone and connected to the 3200 via Bluetooth, or we can, as I say, use a keyboard or mouse connected via that USB port on the back to navigate around that Skype and connect to our users and start a conference. Some interesting things with the Skype call. So call control functions are actually available directly through the GVC3200. Skype contacts can be imported into the GVC3200. At the moment, remote users, if you've got multiple Skype members in a conference, and remember we can have up to 9, if you've got multiple Skype members in a conference, they will only see the convener of the conference. The people in the room watching the 3200 will see all participants. This process of bringing the calls together and playing them back is called what Grandstream refers to as mixing, and at the moment there are some limitations on how that mixing works in an app world. Remember, the Skype people that we're communicating with are running single clients versions of Skype, so they're not using the Skype multi-point application, they're just using standard Skype. So That's where those limitations come from, but Grandstream are working to get rid of all of those. The other thing that we can't do at the moment on this platform is have a SIP participant and a Skype participant and a Google participant all mixed together in one conference. We believe that's going to be available in the next release of firmware, which isn't too far away now, approximately less than a month, we're told. So, as I say, at the moment, we can't mix different types of participants. In the next version of software and in future versions of software for the 3200, we'll see that mixing capability greatly enhanced. So BlueJeans, I don't know how many of you guys use BlueJeans, but it's a very popular hosted platform. It's pretty simple to register to. It's a subscriber-based service, so you have to pay for it. But the GVC3200 has a inbuilt BlueJeans client for connecting to that, and it also has the ability, of course, to download and use the BlueJeans app. So 2 ways of accessing BlueJeans with the 3200. And once you're into BlueJeans, as I said, it's a subscriber-based service. You must have an account, and depending on what account options you went with, what access level with BlueJeans, what you've purchased, you get the ability to join a conference, start a conference, or schedule a conference, and all very, very straightforward. So deployments, what do deployments look like? There's a few different options for how to do this, obviously. So we have the pure deployment where the 3200 is being used for a high quality video room system with the up to 12 times optical zoom capabilities, etc. Now, we deploy these room systems all around the country, in this case 5 offices, and then every one of those offices has the ability to initiate and host a conference, either point-to-point or point-to-multipoint, and there basically we're using the Grandstream, not dissimilar to some of the other lesser conferencing products in the market. We have the hybrid deployment where we want to use the Grandstream to interconnect with other third-party video conferencing platforms. So whether Polycom, Cisco, Yealink, LifeSize, whoever it is out there you want to talk to, the Grandstream will have the ability to communicate via them at the SIP level. Then we have the budget deployment. Here we have a single 3200, and we have a number of the 3275 video phones distributed across the organization, across our corporate network. With the single 3200 can host the video conferencing between multiple participants in that environment. And the dynamic deployment. This is the way most people will use this system. The ability to go across to talk to any SIP-based platform, any app that's supported with an Android client, any SIP device, and across hosted platforms. They'll use the 3200 how they want, when they want, to communicate to who they want. And there will always be a mechanism to get to someone. And when we look at those other deployments, in fact, as I said, they are all dynamic as well. Having the M32, whether you use it initially as a traditional room-based system or to talk to some of your partners who have Polycom or Cisco systems installed, the M3200 is ready to go to allow you to communicate across all those other methods that we've spoken about. So when we upload this recording to the internet for you on the Alloy website, there will also be a zip package there which will contain the documents up on the screen at the moment. The application notes for some of the applications, the more popular applications that people will use this device for, copy of this presentation, but also the administration guide, user guide, and some other useful documents there for including the XML phone book for setting up shared corporate-wide phone books and contacts, etc., and some tips for conference room setup and best ways to lay it out and deploy it. So as I said, with the mixing, so when we're in a SIP environment or when we're in a pure Grandstream environment, mixing works just like any other system. When we want to combine SIP and apps, that's not supported currently, but it will be supported in the next version of the firmware. So that ability to be connected to another Grandstream 3200, perhaps a Polycom, and a Skype user at the same time, will be supported to bring them into a single conference. Not in the current firmware though. And as I said, we'll see more and more sophistication added into that mixing capability as we move forward. And just briefly, if you like what this can do, having an Android device as your video conferencing platform, if you'd like to be able to do that in an audio environment, and up to 7-way audio conference, and have the ability to conference in via Android apps, etc., the GVC3200 is coming shortly. We've seen the prototypes, shouldn't be too far away, and that brings the same power of the 3200 to the audio conferencing world. So look forward to that, seeing that. Okay, guys,